Well, I think I'll talk a little bit about the question of why someone might want to retire in Vietnam or at least give it a try for a while. Um, it's probably not for everybody, but some people like it quite well. Um, I guess one of the reasons I can think of is so that you could have this as the view off your balcony. And I don't think there's a lot of places in the world right now where a person can find a sea view apartment uh, that isn't too badly set up, that is in the price range of this place. And so, yeah, cost of living is definitely a big factor in moving to Vietnam, and um, maybe especially in moving to Nha Trang. The bigger cities of Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi are considerably more expensive. Um, I'm sure there are cheaper places in Vietnam that aren't as developed, but as far as finding a place that is relatively tourist friendly, meaning you can find international restaurants and oh, find not a lot of not a lot of imported foods, but you can get imported things like imported pasta sauce, uh, pasta, um, Mexican salsas, and tortillas, things like that. Uh, Although some of those things may not come from Mexico, they may come from England or Australia. But anyway, yeah. So you don't have to be totally on a Vietnamese diet if you lived in Nha Trang or some of the other tourist areas, or certainly not the biggest cities. But yeah, rent is definitely lower in Nha Trang than at least the major cities. And not to mention, I would say the quality of life is considerably better here, if you like beaches anyway, and cleaner air and a few things like that. Uh, Also, it's not not so spread out, so you can get around quite easily. Uh, Even the most expensive taxi ride in town is probably going to be about $5 or $6 one way. Up in this neighborhood, there are restaurants right in this building, and if you were to go down the elevator, this street here, Hon Chong Street, has a number of restaurants on it. There's a deli, they call it, more or less of a imported food supermarket, mini supermarket, in this building that has imported cheeses and the pasta sauces and salsa I was mentioning. There are a couple of other stores of that nature in town too. Actually, the same store, Moon Milk, has, I think, one other location, maybe two other locations. But anyway, so yeah, the cost of living here is pretty low. Right now, it's much lower than normal for rent because borders are closed. I would think most apartments are 30% or more discounted from normal days. Um, so I'm paying at the moment $300 just under that, for rent and utilities. Um, this particular apartment, a two-bedroom apartment on the 30th floor of Muang Than apartment building, um, this one probably would have rented for $400 to $450 a month, probably depending a little bit on the season and whether you did a longer term lease or not. Um, but And also utilities would have been a little bit higher because I used to have to pay maybe roughly $30 a month for management fees, which I think included Wi-Fi and whatever. But since the borders have been closed, apartments have been, many of them have been actually paying the management fee themselves. So anyway, yeah, the cost of living here is quite cheap, but I think even in normal times, after, if there ever is such a thing again, after borders reopen, um, there will be apartments available in Nha Trang, in this building even for $300 to $400 a month rent, totally furnished, and then your utilities could be anything from maybe 50 to $80 a month, maybe a bit less, maybe 30 to 80, depending on whether you're paying management fees. And of course, the amount of air conditioning you use is going to be a factor. Sania Bay, just up the way here, is a little higher priced. Now the rents are reasonable, about maybe not quite as cheap as I'm paying. I think you could find $400 a month apartments there now, although they would probably be studios, whereas I have a two-bedroom place. And down in the main beach area, there are places that are a bit higher, and I don't doubt there are places that could be quite high, perhaps in the $1,000 a month range. Um, Again, I haven't looked at any of those, but I know there are more expensive apartment projects in the main beach area. Anyway, so that would be one reason, cost of living, and I guess also I could say quality of life, in that if you happen to like living near a beach, you've got one here. Second thing would be weather. If you aren't a fan of winter, Vietnam certainly doesn't have much of a winter. And it is such a long north to south country, has such a long beach line, that weather can vary quite a bit. For example, in Hanoi and places to the north, and in the mountains, the winter can be relatively cool. Nothing like Canada or the US in the north, but still relatively cool. Even Nha Trang, which is about midway down the coast, from about November until February, can be cool enough where you might want to wear a sweatshirt at night and trousers and socks, whereas much of the year, in my case anyway, t-shirts, flip-flops, and shorts are all that's required. Um, so there is maybe more variety in weather in Vietnam than, I'm going to say, than probably in many other Southeast Asian countries. Uh, there are the mountains up in the north and inland, and I haven't been there, but I have heard that the weather can be cooler even in the hot season, and definitely cooler in the winter months of December, January. Also, even though Nha Trang is about halfway down the coast, I did find that by the time it got into later in November and December and January, I didn't really want to get into the ocean. I mean, people were doing it, although it was probably more often the surfers who were wearing wetsuits than actual swimmers by the time it got into December and January. But at the same time, some friends went to the island of Phu Quoc, which is near the Cambodian border, and about as far south in Vietnam as you can get. And there on New Year, it seemed that it was getting up closer to higher 80s Fahrenheit, or maybe 30, 32 degrees Celsius. So even when it is winter in the worst, or the worst of winter, the coldest weather, there may be options for getting away to beaches that are warmer in Vietnam. So those are two reasons, I guess I would say, that Vietnam's not a bad retirement spot. The visa situation is a little bit undesirable in that you do have to do visa runs. And quality of food, I'd say, is quite good. Healthcare is cheap, although I haven't had anything done here. So I can't really say it's the greatest, and some of the guidebooks I've read have pretty much recommended that if you need anything very major done, you might be wise to go to a nearby country like, say, Thailand, which is noted for better medical care, or back to your home country. So anyway, those are a couple of reasons why you might consider retirement in Vietnam.